Anti-Semitic attacks.
Bomb threats at temples, about anti-Semitic attacks, and he turned it to being an attack somehow on him, as though he were anti-Semitic. That's not what the reporter asked.
The reporter is sympathetic.
Very much so.
Trump says he's reached out more to the Orthodox community than we've seen recently from presidents. So he wasn't there as an enemy. And by the way, that is completely irrelevant. The idea of wanting a friendly reporter is at best oxymoronic. But here's the thing, Brian. He doesn't decry anti-Semitism, racism, white nationalism. I don't know why they cotton to Donald Trump. I can't prove to you why it happens, but I can prove to you that when given a layup of, I don't want anything to do with David Duke. If you're a racist, stay away from me. I don't want you in my camp. You know, if you're an anti-Semite, I'm coming out, I'm going to find you. That's not who we are. I'm from Queens. You know, I grew up with Jews. They're my friends. They're my family. I'm coming for you. He doesn't take the layup. Why?
This is going to haunt him. You know, for journalists, they have to, as we cover this administration, think, can we look back years from now and be proud of the way we've covered this administration? Well, the same thing is true for President Trump. Is he going to look back when the history books start to be written? Is he going to be proud of what he said?
Yeah, he probably will.
But on these issues, of anti-Semitism,
because
racism,
he said what he believes.
Go there, Brian. He won't go there. He's never tweeted once on this. He tweets on everything else. He's never tweeted once about white supremacy or anti-Semitism. He stays away from that. He doesn't want his followers to hear him say that.
Look, I don't think he'll be proud of the way he's handled this so far, but it's only 4 weeks. He could address this any day of the week.
But look, they say that we're in the bubble here because it's New York, but there's no better place to be to understand who Donald Trump is and the people who know him best. He does not consider himself any of these ugly things. His friends will say he's had a pattern of being magnanimous towards communities that he's being criticized from now, but he doesn't answer the questions the right way.
Brian, Bill, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. International viewers, appreciate you being with us.
Russia is a ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia.
Controversy continues to haunt the West Wing.
I see stories of chaos. Yet it is the exact opposite.
Retired Vice Admiral Bob Harward turning down the job of National Security Advisor.
We want to see the transcript. The American public deserves to get the answers.
The leaks are absolutely real. The news is fake.
Some of the information that has been leaked, you would probably only know if you were in his inner circle.
To be honest, I inherited a mess at home and abroad.
Mr. President, it was one thing to campaign. It's now time to govern.
This is New Day with Chris Cuomo and Allison Camerata.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your New Day. President Trump's 77-minute-long press conference was quite the spectacle and one for the history books. He defended his record. He aired his many grievances. President Trump fielding questions about Russia, which he dismissed as fake news and a ruse.
Word of the day, it was a ballyhoo. Was it effective for the president? He did address what is really a main issue right now of scrutiny, why he fired his national security advisor. The more we learn about the timeline and the facts, the less sense the resignation makes. We also have news that the man they wanted to take over for Flynn has turned down the job. The question, can the president reset after the chaos of the first 4 weeks of his presidency? Let's begin our coverage with CNN's Joe Johns, live at the White House. What do you know?
Chris, an amazing news conference, yes, but a familiar Trump tactic. The president using antics on live TV to distract from the controversies surrounding him and his administration. Very similar to things he did during the campaign.
The press, honestly, is out of control. The level of dishonesty is out of control.
President Trump unloading on his critics.
I turn on the TV, open the newspapers, and I see stories of chaos. Chaos. Yet it is the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine.
Blaming others instead of himself for what has been a rocky 4 weeks in the White House.
To be honest, I inherited a mess. It's a mess.
Holding court for more than an hour, the president defending former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, fired this week for lying about discussing sanctions with a Russian ambassador.
I fired him because of what he said to Mike Pence. Very simple. Mike was doing his job. He was calling countries and his counterparts. So it certainly would have been okay with me if he did it. I would have directed him to do it if I thought he wasn't doing it.
And lashing out at the intelligence community over leaks.
What he did wasn't wrong. What was wrong was the way that other people, including yourselves in this room, were given that information. Because that was classified information. It was given illegally. That's the real problem.
The commander-in-chief sparring with the media about reporting on leaks.
The leaks are absolutely real. The news is fake.
If the information coming from those leaks is real, then how can the stories be fake?
The reporting is fake. The whole Russian thing, that's a ruse. That's a ruse.
And defending his posture on Russia after a CNN report that his campaign aides had constant contact with Russian intelligence operatives.
I have nothing to do with Russia. Haven't made a phone call to Russia in years. Don't speak to people from Russia. Not that I wouldn't, I just have nobody to speak to.
Even joking about his response to recent Russian provocations.
The greatest thing I could do is shoot that ship that's 30 miles offshore right out of the water. Everyone in this country is going to say, oh, it's so great. That's not great. That's not great. I would love to be able to get along with Russia.
The president defending the rollout of his now halted travel ban.
On the travel ban, would you accept that that was a good example of the smooth running of government?
Yeah, I do. I do. Let me tell you about the travel.
Were there any mistakes in that?
Wait. I know who you are. Just wait.
Insisting that it went smoothly and blasting federal judges again.
The only problem that we had is we had a bad court. The rollout was perfect.
The president also touting again a false claim about his electoral win margin.
We got 306 because people came out and voted like they've never seen before. So that's the way it goes. I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan.
President Trump raising eyebrows for asking a reporter to set up a meeting for him with the Congressional Black Caucus.
Do you want to set up the meeting?
No.
Are they friends of yours?
I'm just a reporter.
No, set up the meeting.
I know some of them, but I'm sure
Let's go set up a meeting. I would love to meet with the Black Caucus.
And again, failing to condemn a rise in anti-Semitic attacks happening across the U.S.
What we are concerned about, and what we haven't really heard being addressed, is an uptick in anti-Semitism and how the government is planning to take care of it.
I am the least anti-Semitic person that you've ever seen in your entire life. Number two, racism. The least racist person. In fact, we did very well relative to other people running as a Republican. Quiet, quiet, quiet.
Make no mistake, even after that news conference, the controversy has not gone away. Retired Vice Admiral Bob Harward turning down an opportunity to replace Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor, citing his family as the reason, though friends say he didn't want to get involved in all that was going on here at the White House. The president flies out to Charleston today to tour a Boeing plant, and after that, tomorrow, a big rally in Florida. Back to you.
Okay, Joe, thank you very much. Let's get analysis of the president's presser from CNN political commentator and former White House communications director Jen Psaki. Jack Kingston.
Good morning.
Good morning. Great to see you. Jack Kingston, former senior advisor to the Trump campaign and a former Georgia congressman, and CNN political commentator Ana Navarro. Great to see all of you. There were many things that were eyebrow-raising or certainly got a lot of attention during this 77-minute presser. So let's start, Jack, with the moment where we just heard it, but I think that it bears repeating, where President Trump talked about the Russia spy ship off the coast of Connecticut. Listen to this.
The greatest thing I could do is shoot that ship that's 30 miles offshore right out of the water. Everyone in this country is going to say, oh, it's so great. That's not great. That's not great. I would love to be able to get along with Russia.
Congressman, who in the country would say, oh, that's so great?
Well, I think what he talked about Russia here and there throughout the press conference, and what he was kind of saying is he's a little bit darned if he does and darned that if he doesn't at this point, because no matter what he does, somebody's going to say, oh, he's being soft on Putin. He had also pointed out earlier that Hillary had the reset. He did not mention, but we have heard it in the past, that Bush said he looked into the soul of Putin, and he talked about it would be a good thing to get along with Russia. They're a nuclear power.
Right,
they're
but what does it mean
like
that bombing
are,
the ship, the shooting down the ship off the coast would be so great? What is that?
Well, I think what he's saying is some people who are very anti-Russian now, and they're kind of doing some sword rattling, they would be placated by such a move. I don't think he literally meant it. I think he was just being sarcastic. That there are those who say, okay, we can't stand Russia and we want to do something bad, get this ship off our coast. But he was saying, I do want to get along with Russia, but he was also saying, I don't have property there. I've never done deals over there. I don't even know Putin except for the 2 phone calls, one about the inauguration and one about the election itself. So I think he was on the offensive about Russia. He came clean about his campaign workers had nothing to do with Russia. They weren't interacting with him. And he did not run from the Russian topic in any way.
Okay. I want to bring in Jen Psaki because you have been around the State Department and the White House. What did you hear in that comment?
I heard he may have been saying it offhand, but I think this is a concerning trend of sort of not reassuring the public. The reason to do a press conference, I should say, is to announce something new, to further your agenda. And all we're talking about now is the emotional roller coaster and what he may or may not have meant. When you're President of the United States, you want to be clear and definitive about what you mean, what message you're sending. Because believe me, there are leaders around the world, there are embassies around the world who are reading his comments and saying, what did he mean? I'm confused by that. And that's not the message you want to send.
Anna, Congressman Kingston says, he was just joking. Don't take him literally about that.
Oh, I think there were parts of that press conference where he was joking. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said there were so many eyebrow-raising moments. That's exactly what he wanted to do. That's why he was out there for 77 minutes. I thought they were going to need a hook to get him off the stage. He was having so much fun. He's not trying to advance an agenda. What he's trying to do is get us off topic. The day before, we were laser focused on the issue of Trump world and the ties with Russia. Today, we are here having to unpack 77 minutes of unraveling, unhinged, unfiltered, unplugged, crazy, funny at times, substantive nuggets at times. I mean, I never thought it was possible to get whiplash from watching TV. Yesterday, I got whiplash from watching TV. We were supposed to listen to a press conference announcing the new labor secretary, who, by the way, is a guy from Miami and a very solid pick, whose name he couldn't even remember halfway through the press conference. Instead, he was there to distract us, people. He's playing us again and again and again.
Okay, let me play for you another moment where he talked about the mess that he inherited from President Obama. Listen to this.
To be honest, I inherited a mess. It's a mess. At home and abroad, a mess. I just want to let you know, I inherited a mess. ISIS has spread like cancer. Another mess I inherited.
Jen, as part of the previous administration, do you want to take a crack at that?
Look, I think he's been having problems with the English language. Maybe he's confusing created and inherited here. There are some issues that are ongoing that every president who comes into office deals with. There's no question that the battle to defeat ISIL was continuing when he took office. But the reality is he also took over where there had been the longest period of job growth in history. More than 20 million people had health care. So, I think the troubling trend I saw in the press conference, and this is a perfect example of it, is this belief that if he says something, then it's true. And the irony is that's a page out of the Putin playbook. That's exactly what state-run media, governments where their state-run media do. And people should be concerned about that.
Congressman, Jen, I think, is being too modest, because we have graphs that show he did not inherit a mess. Certainly when it comes to jobs in the economy, he inherited a gift. I mean, here's the unemployment rate. Look at how far down it is from where President Obama, who inherited a mess, came into office there, where you see the peak of it, and now it's done nothing but go down. So how do you explain Mr. Trump's view?
Well, number one, I think he absolutely did inherit a mess. ISIS, for example, did not exist when President Obama came to office. ISIS happened under his watch. The demise of Iraq, the nuclear deal with Iran, the president of the Philippines calling Obama the son of a prostitute, to clean it up, in fact. In terms of the economy, 95 million Americans underemployed. The household income fallen from 57,000 to 53,000. 43 million people on food stamps, I would call that a mess. And that's what the election was all about. It was about people who said, we want change, we want an outsider, we want somebody from the business community who can turn this thing around. Our immigration, there's no immigration security. Nobody quite knows where what our immigration policy is.
Yeah, I do want to get to that in a minute. But Anna, how do you see it?
I'll tell you what was a mess. Was this last week in Donald Trump's presidency, right? We had his national security advisor be fired or resigned, God knows what, in a scandal. We have his senior advisor who's, being cited for ethical breaches. We have, so many different things. His White House being investigated for security breaches at Mar-a-Lago. His labor secretary who had to withdraw. And so by telling us this and having us dissect whether it's true or not, he is distracting us from his mess, from his week from hell. We are here on TV arguing on whether he inherited a mess or not, because we are not talking about the incredible mess that has been the last 30 days under his presidency. A White House that leaks like a sea of people that have stabbing. It's crazy what's going on there. Yeah. But we're not talking about that.
Yeah, Jack, I want to give you the last word. We're almost out of time. But what's your response to that? That some people see Mr. Trump's month as chaotic and messy.
I absolutely don't think so. I think he hit the ground running. He has done a lot. He's worked through executive orders. He's reestablished a great relationship on the Hill. He has gotten his most of his nominees through the confirmation process, despite absolute positive Democrat obstruction. Democrats not even going to the committee meetings. Democrats not even going to the swearing in. I think he's worked through a remarkable denial on the left who are saying they still don't like the election results. Donald Trump is persevering, and he's doing a great job. So, you're going to have some bumps in a new administration. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'm in Chicago. I was with David Axelrod last night and had dinner with him and participated in a program that he hosted. And he talked about the early days of the Obama administration, the early days of Bush, early days of Clinton. There's always going to be a few bumps in the road, but this is a presidency and this is a White House that does have a plan and an agenda to make America great again, and it's going to happen.
We'll have to get David Axelrod on to see how he characterized if he thinks at the beginning days.
He must have drunk too much.
I doubt he'd see a comparison.
We're just like this, but we like these bipartisan dinners. That is beautiful. That's a nice touch. Jen, Jack, Anna, thank you very much, Chris.
All right, well, here is something that we do know, is that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are having a hard time getting their footing, and the president's news conference didn't make anything easier. The word stunned keeps coming up. CNN's Sunlen Serfati live on Capitol Hill with more. What are you hearing?
Well, Chris, it's quickly turned into must-see TV up here on Capitol Hill. A number of House Republicans, in fact, were working out in the House gym at the time of this press conference, all glued to their television screens, and sources describing their reactions as varying levels of shock and dismay. A Republican senator telling CNN's John King that this is something that should have been done in front of a therapist, not on national live television. And then there was this reaction coming from a Republican lawmaker who said, quote, "We're just trying to manage this bleep. The people that love him will love him more. The people that hate him will hate him more. And the people in the middle probably will look at it in the way we look at it in Congress, which is that's just the new normal. That's just the bleep that happens. I don't know how else to manage it." And that really speaking to the great sense of frustration up here on Capitol Hill, the fact that they do have this ambitious agenda. They have the big ticket items of tax reform, repealing and replacing Obamacare, of which Paul Ryan and President Trump have both recently indicated that they want to move forward on in the next couple of weeks. But there is this worry and concern, will any of this get delayed with this daily deluge of these distractions coming from the White House?
All right. President Trump made a lot of claims in his hastily planned news conference. One of the exchanges got to what the heart of the allegation of fake is all about. When President Trump says that, more often than not, it means he doesn't like something. Here's a case in point played out in real time. You got NBC's Pete Alexander. He is a respected reporter, and he called the president out on one of his claims. Watch what happened.
You said today that you had the biggest electoral margin since Ronald Reagan with 304 or 306 electoral votes. In fact, President Obama got 365 and 2.
Well, I'm talking about Republican.
President Obama 332 and George H.W. Bush 426 when he won as president. So why should Americans trust?
Well, no, I was given that information. I don't know. I was just given. We had a very, very big.
All right. So, what is the truth? The truth is the president is wrong. He hasn't had the biggest electoral victory since Ronald Reagan. You heard there Pete point out George H.W. Bush, 426 in 1988. Is it a big deal that he was wrong? Well, that's up to you. But it certainly isn't fake to call him out on it. And there are other issues of this that need to be addressed. It's not about how you feel about his style. It's about what is true, what is not. Let's keep it real. Let's bring in John Greenberg, staff writer at PolitiFact, to tell us what is fact and what isn't. John, appreciate the quick turnaround on this. Let's start with an easy one, all right? The Clinton debates. This is a big piece of ammunition for Trump supporters, certainly against CNN. The claim is that Hillary Clinton got debate questions from CNN. Here's the allegation.
They're giving stuff, what was said in an office about Hillary cheating on the debates, which, by the way, nobody mentions. Nobody mentions that Hillary received the questions to the debates.
Here are the facts. John, you tell me if I'm wrong, because I lived this situation. There were no debate questions given. He's talking about a town hall, not a debate. There was one question given. It was by Donna Brazile. It was not done by a reporter at CNN. It had nothing to do with the team that works on those special events. I've worked with them. They are of the highest integrity. And Brazile paid the price for that. What is your take on it?
That's precisely what we found, although we did find that there were two instances where somebody gave her the topic of a question. One involved whether states should allow the death penalty, and the other involved the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. But you know, the fact of the matter is that, as you rightly point out, there was enormous coverage of this. Donna Brazile had to step down from being an associate of CNN as an analyst, and the reality is it was two topics that were brought up, not a whole list of questions. So this, for us, was rated mostly false when it came up during the campaign.
I was even more forgiving. We gave it a not quite. And the reason I didn't name the other instance is because that involves somebody who had nothing to do with CNN at all. I was just sticking to what you could put on us, even within the realm of possibility. All right, Clinton on uranium, okay? This is what the president makes as an allegation.
Nobody talks about that. I didn't do anything for Russia. I've done nothing for Russia. Hillary Clinton gave them 20% of our uranium.
All right. Hillary Clinton gave them 20% of the U.S. uranium. Now, the little bit of context as to why this is false is this is a little bit of a discrete point, but it goes to not inventory of uranium, but capacity of uranium, and that's why it is easy to flag this as a false statement. But there's a more important reason. The real heart of the allegation, the unsupported proof in this accusation, is that Clinton did this. What is your take on that notion?
The actual process was that 9 federal agencies needed to sign off on this. I mean, essentially what you have is a Russian state-owned company buying a controlling share in a Canadian-based uranium company. And because that Canadian company had assets in the United States, then it was subject to approval. But there were 9 agencies that needed to sign off. And the only person who could actually kill the deal, technically, was President Obama. So it really doesn't fit with the way the process plays out to put it all on her.
Okay. Now, a last one. Again, a little bit of tricky. Mood of the business world. Markets are up. Absolutely no question about that. Here's what the president said.
The stock market has hit record numbers, as you know, and there has been a tremendous surge of optimism in the business world, which is, to me, means something much different than it used to. It used to mean, oh, that's good. Now it means that's good for jobs.
Now, you have one relative assessment, which is he said he inherited a mess here, and he's turned it around so quickly. If you compare, and you can go online, look this up for yourselves, and see what the economic conditions were when Obama took over in that depth of that trough of the recession, and now this situation looks like a gift. But what do you make of the claim that the stock market rise shows that this is the Trump effect?
Well, there's a measure of truth in this because the investment community certainly looked at a Trump administration as being much more favorable to the things that matter to them in terms of taxes and in terms of regulation. So a lot of the people that we talked to said, yeah, people were much more upbeat. And in fact, of course, the Republicans held on to the entirety of Congress. You are quite right to point out that the economic momentum was going very nicely throughout the last year of the Obama administration. And so Mr. Trump did inherit something that was going in the right direction. He can't take full credit for it, but people did respond to his victory.
John Greenberg, thank you very much. Appreciate the help from PolitiFact as always. Allison, as you like to point out, this president has met with more business leaders than we've seen this pace early on. He's got an ambitious tax agenda to make up the gap for a lot of people who haven't shared in the economic prosperity that's come along with the stock market. But all of this fighting about what's fake and these distractions have kept his own agenda on hold.
Well, Chris, we will get into all of that because President Trump and his explosive news conference is what we'll be talking about next. Our media experts are going to take us through the most remarkable moments. Still reviewing former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's communications with Russia, but law enforcement officials say that the ousted advisor is not expected to face charges unless new info comes to light. CNN Justice correspondent Pamela Brown is live in Washington with more. What have you learned, Pamela?
Well, Allison, we've learned that Michael Flynn initially told FBI investigators last month that sanctions were not discussed with Russia's ambassador, but then FBI agents challenged him, asking if he was certain that was his answer, and then he said he didn't remember when he was pressed by the FBI. Now, the FBI does not believe he was intentionally misleading them, according to officials, and is not expected to pursue any charges against Flynn, as you point out, barring new information that changes what they know, law enforcement officials say. Now, a U.S. official confirmed to CNN last week that Flynn and the ambassador did discuss sanctions, among other matters, during that December call. And then Flynn, as we know, was fired by President Trump earlier this week after it was revealed that he withheld information from Vice President Mike Pence about his conversations with Russia's ambassador to the U.S. Then Acting Attorney General Sally Yates delayed notifying the White House until after Flynn was interviewed, and FBI Director James Comey did not object at that time. But there is still an ongoing, broader FBI review of Flynn and Russia-related dealings. Republicans in the House now appear to be warming to investigating the full scope of the allegations of Flynn's Russia dealings. This, as Flynn's former position of National Security Advisor to the President is still open after retired Vice Admiral Bob Harwood turned down the job, citing family and financial reasons. Chris?
All right, Pamela, thank you very much. President Trump missing the mark with a claim about his Electoral College win. Up next, there are lots of instances of this. We're going to separate fact from fiction from the president's news conference. We'll get plenty of yap about how people feel about what happened yesterday. What is true? We'll deal with that next.
Yet it is the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine, despite the fact that I can't get my cabinet approved.
That was President Trump. During the press conference, he intensified his attacks on the media, sparring with reporters for 77 minutes. Let's bring back our panel to discuss this. David Chalian, Frank Sesno, and Julie Pace. Frank, let me start with you. He doesn't see it as chaos. You know, people watching, or the media might call it a spectacle, they might call it chaos. I think that was sort of insightful. This is his style. He does it. He's enjoying it, he said a couple of times. This isn't, to him, chaos. What did you hear?
Well, I think the president needs to be very careful here because
first of all, what he says needs to conform with what other people see, or he's going to have a credibility problem when he comes back to the country on something that really matters in the middle of a crisis. Look, the media didn't fire Michael Flynn. The media didn't convince 6 senators to go south on his previous labor secretary. The media didn't roll back the travel ban. The media didn't create a situation where Kellyanne Conway goes out and says one thing, and an hour later Sean Spicer says another. If that's a fine-tuned machine, then in 35 years of watching White Houses of both parties, I need to go back to the shop and figure out how these things get put together. There are problems in paradise. George W. Bush would have acknowledged that. Barack Obama would have acknowledged that. There would have been no problem for Donald Trump to acknowledge that. So this is about several things. One, it's about how he sees the media and how he sees himself being portrayed. Two, and more importantly, it is about his own credibility. These things matter, and he's going to need to come back to the American public and to the United States Congress and to the media themselves when it really matters, and these details are going to factor in whether people believe him and are able to rally around him. So what I saw yesterday was a string of unreality tied together by attacks on the media and other institutions whom he blames for this. And if he's going to have the long-term credibility and stability that he needs to govern, he's going to need to move off of that.
Also because, Julie, when you make it about what is real and what is not real, what you can show as fact and what you can't, he's creating a very high bar for himself, and it's clear that fake to the President of the United States means what he does not like. You saw Pete Alexander get up from NBC and very simply just lay out obvious math and history to the President about his electoral win and what has happened in history. The President said it's the highest since Reagan. It's just demonstrably untrue. He calls that fake. What does that set up as a constant back and forth with the media?
Right, it creates this situation where if he disagrees with the approach of a story, not just even the facts of it, just the approach of it, he will declare it fake news. And he does it because he knows, and we can all acknowledge this, that there is a lot of mistrust in the media. And for his supporters, the media is a ripe target. He knows that they will back him every time he gets out there and bashes us.
There's also mistrust of the media, and that's fine as long as you point it out with fact each time. If you say, you know, Cuomo got it wrong, he said 6, the answer is 8, you win. He doesn't do that. He didn't do it once yesterday.
Exactly. And we have a responsibility in the press when we make a mistake to own it. And what you saw, though, was a president who is going through a rough month by any standards. When you have your major policy rollout get stopped in the courts and you lose your national security advisor because they misled the vice president multiple times, that is a rough start to the administration. And whether the president acknowledges it publicly, I don't know if is really the question. I think it's whether he can acknowledge this privately and make the changes that he needs, because he has not faced a real crisis right now, and he will pretty quickly probably as president. And if he can't get some of these behind-the-scenes problems fixed, it raises a lot of questions about how he'll be able to deal with something that we can't even imagine right now that will land on his desk as president.
David, there was a window into how Mr. Trump processes these things. He does see any critical coverage as fake, and he thinks that unless it's sort of glowing, that the tone is bad. He had an exchange with Jim Acosta. He's had a few contentious exchanges with CNN's Jim Acosta. So let me play this one for you from yesterday.
You said that the leaks are real, but the news is fake. I guess I don't understand. It seems that there's a disconnect there. If the information coming from those leaks is real, then how can the stories be fake?
No, the reporting is fake.
And if I may ask, I just want to ask
Jim, you know what it is? Here's the thing. The public isn't, you know, they read newspapers, they see television, they watch. They don't know if it's true or false because they're not involved. I'm involved. And I'll tell you what else I see. I see tone. You know the word tone. The tone is such hatred. I'm really not a bad person, by the way. No, but the tone is such, I do get good ratings, you have to admit that. The tone is such hatred.
Those asides, I do get good ratings, I'm not a bad person, those were telling.
Oh, God, Allison, without a doubt. I am so torn about this conversation. So much of the coverage of the press conference has been about his relationship with the media, and I think for the large part, the country really doesn't care about that. The country doesn't care if he calls us fake news or not. We do care, and it's important. As Chris is saying, facts do matter. So I'm always, I get concerned when we get too much sort of talking about ourselves in this. But on the other hand, if we are doing proper analysis and assessment of this person who's serving as President of the United States of America, it is somebody who is completely obsessed and consumed by media coverage, his media coverage. It is clearly one of his motivating life forces is his own media coverage. And so it is hard not to make that a central point because it is so central to his worldview.
Frank, let's end this reckoning in terms of what the consequences are here. Clearly for the president, this is about popularity. He wants people to like him. He wants to be respected. And the paradox is that what will give him that respect and like is telling people the truth and getting things done, and he's getting in his way on both of those. The case in point is yesterday he spent, 11 different instances mentioning Hillary Clinton and kind of reflecting back on her as some kind of proof of why this was being done to him, that it was actually about her and her failings, and now he's being blamed for beating her. Where does this get all of us collectively going forward?
It gets us unfocused, and that's the problem that the president is confronting, and in a way the problem that the country is confronting. The president ran on jobs, on immigration, on trade, on globalization, on big issues, and the difficulty that we're having in this conversation, and I completely agree with David Chalian. I mean, this conversation is awkward for us. We shouldn't be talking about the media. We don't like talking about ourselves. The media shouldn't be the story. What should be the story is the story. What should be the story is the people. What should be the story are the issues that these folks ran on. What any communications director in a White House does, what any chief of staff does, is focus the boss, focus the message of the day. It is the bully pulpit. That's where they set the agenda. And when the agenda is scattered all over like this, then the media and the political class and the members on the Hill and everywhere else are all over the joint. And that's what's happening right now. They need focus at the White House.
Panel? Thank you very much.
One of the big situations that has to be resolved is what happened with General Mike Flynn. There's another piece of evidence that you have to look at. The FBI met with Flynn, interviewed him. He said nothing happened with the sanctions. They pressed him. He said, well, look, I don't remember. That's been called misleading. Not to the FBI. We're going to get into why they are not pursuing criminal charges and what it means for what we still don't know about what led to this man's resignation.
The press has become so dishonest. The press, honestly, is out of control. I want to find a friendly reporter.
Deflector in chief strikes again.
Russia is fake news put out by the media.
If the information coming from those leaks is real, then how can the stories be
No,
fake?
the reporting is fake. Mike was doing his job. I didn't direct him, but I would have directed him if he didn't do it.
Retired Vice Admiral Bob Harward taking a pass on the job of National Security Advisor.
His administration is running like a fine-tuned machine.
While we're in this back and forth, the world is getting more dangerous.
This is New Day with Chris Cuomo and Allison Camerata.
All right, we want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. This is New Day. It's Friday, February 17th, 6 o'clock here in New York. And up first, President Donald Trump returned to the scorched earth politics that got him elected. The president taking his fate in his own hands. No more press secretaries, no more spokespeople. Him, a podium, and a microphone against the reporters. An extraordinary hour-long news conference that gave us a lot to discuss and fact-check.
So questions about Russia continue, though President Trump tried to dismiss those as a ruse. This, as we learn that the president's top choice to replace Michael Flynn for National Security Advisor has turned down the job. Some people see chaos. Mr. Trump says it's a well-oiled machine. Let's begin our coverage with CNN Sunlen Serfati live on Capitol Hill. Sunlen.
Good morning to you, Allison. This was a press conference that was originally meant for Donald Trump to announce his labor secretary pick, but it quickly devolved into bringing out vintage Donald Trump from the campaign trail. White House aides tell CNN that this was something the president was itching to do, especially amid all these headlines that his White House is in a state of chaos. And it could all just be a warm-up act as Trump hits the road tomorrow to hold his first post-White House campaign-style rally in Florida.
The press, honestly, is out of control. The level of dishonesty is out of control.
President Trump unloading on his critics.
I turn on the TV, open the newspapers, and I see stories of chaos. Chaos. Yet it is the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine.
Blaming others instead of himself for what has been a rocky 4 weeks in the White House.
To be honest, I inherited a mess. It's a mess.
Holding court for more than an hour, the president defending former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who he fired this week for lying about discussing sanctions with a Russian ambassador.
I fired him because of what he said to Mike Pence. Very simple. Mike was doing his job. He was calling countries and his counterparts. So it certainly would have been okay with me if he did it. I would have directed him to do it if I thought he wasn't doing it.
And lashing out at the intelligence community.
What he did wasn't wrong. What was wrong was the way that other people, including yourselves in this room, were given that information. Because that was classified information. It was given illegally. That's the real problem.
The commander-in-chief sparring with the press about reporting on leaks.
The leaks are absolutely real. The news is fake.
If the information coming from those leaks is real, then how can the stories be fake?
The reporting is fake. The whole Russian thing, that's a ruse. That's a ruse. And by the way, it would be great if we could get along with Russia.
And defending his posture on Russia after a CNN report that his campaign aides had constant contact with Russian intelligence operatives.
I have nothing to do with Russia. Haven't made a phone call to Russia in years. Don't speak to people from Russia. Not that I wouldn't, I just have nobody to speak to.
Even joking about his response to recent Russian provocations.
The greatest thing I could do is shoot that ship that's 30 miles offshore right out of the water. Everyone in this country is going to say, oh, it's so great. That's not great. That's not great. I would love to be able to get along with Russia.
The president defending the rollout of his now halted travel ban.
On the travel ban, would you accept that that was a good example of the smooth running of government?
Yeah, I do. I do. Let me tell you about the travel.
Were there any mistakes in that?
Wait. I know who you are. Just wait.
Insisting that it went smoothly and blasting federal judges again.
The only problem that we had is we had a bad court. The rollout was perfect.
The president also touting again a false claim about his electoral win margin.
We got 306 because people came out and voted like they've never seen before. So that's the way it goes. I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan.
President Trump raising eyebrows for asking a reporter to set up a meeting for him with the Congressional Black Caucus.
Do you want to set up the meeting?
No.
Are they friends of yours?
I'm just a reporter.
No, set up the meeting.
I know some of them, but I'm sure
Let's go set up a meeting. I would love to meet with the Black Caucus.
And again, failing to condemn a rise in anti-Semitic attacks happening across the U.S.
What we are concerned about, and what we haven't really heard being addressed, is an uptick in anti-Semitism and how the government is planning to take care of it.
I am the least anti-Semitic person that you've ever seen in your entire life. Number two, racism. The least racist person. In fact, we did very well relative to other people running as a Republican. Quiet, quiet, quiet.
And reaction to that remarkable press conference came pouring in here on Capitol Hill, including from one Republican senator who told CNN's John King he should do that with a therapist, not on live television. And in that press conference, despite Donald Trump saying that he does have a good replacement potentially lined up to replace National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, hours after he made that statement, Bob Harwood turned down Trump's offer to take that position. He cited his family and friends, but sources
sources also telling CNN that he was very reluctant to accept such a position with a White House in this state of chaos. Now, meantime, the White House is readying to appoint a new communications director, potentially as early as today, Chris, to potentially take some heat off Press Secretary Sean Spicer.
All right, Sondland, thank you very much. Quiet, 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 said the president. He can control the bully pulpit, no question about that, but he can't control the facts. Let's get to them. CNN political director David Chalian, former CNN Washington bureau chief and director of the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University, Frank Sesno, and chief White House correspondent for the Associated Press and Inside Politics contributor Julie Pace. It is good to have you all here. Important morning. Julie, let's start with you and play your exchange, at least in part, with the president yesterday.
Can you say whether you are aware that anyone who advised your campaign had contacts with Russia during the course of the election?
Well, I told you, General Flynn obviously was dealing, so that's one person, but he was dealing as he should have been.
During the election?
No, nobody that I know of. Nobody.
So you're not aware of any contacts during the course of the election?
How many times do I have to answer this question?
Can you just say
Russia
yes or no
is
on
a
it?
ruse. Yeah, I know you have to get up and ask a question so important. Russia is a ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. To the best of my knowledge, no person that I deal with does.
All right, so Julie, the president used the word there, ruse. That's something that's artificial. It's something that's fake. What are the facts that back up the need for you to ask about what he knows?
Well, I think it's important to note that I was the fourth reporter that was trying to get a simple yes or no answer to this question about whether he was aware that there were contacts between his campaign officials and Russian intelligence agencies, as CNN and the New York Times have reported. And it took deep into the news conference when I was asking that question to get him to at least say, nobody that I'm aware of. And I think that's an important statement to get on the record from the president, because you do have this reporting out there that intelligence officials are aware that there were these multiple contacts from different people who both were advising the who were on the campaign in the case of Paul Manafort, and then were advising the campaign from the outside.
David, beyond the spectacle, right? We can talk about the style of this press conference and the spectacle that it was, and there's lots of conversation about that this morning, and we will. But in terms of the substance, you, as a policy wonk type, you know, he made a lot of news. I mean, he gave a date for when there would be a replacement for Obamacare. He talked about tax reform, infrastructure. What jumped out at you?
Yeah, actually, all three of those things as sort of the three big legislative priorities, but hearing that in March he will submit an Obamacare repeal and replacement plan. We know that the Hill is working on one. I think the question that we're trying to sort of sort out now, does that mean the White House is going to submit something different or not? Because that's the way President Trump portrayed it. But knowing that that was March and knowing that that was going to come before tax reform, he said, for budgetary reasons, that sort of put a timeline together. And then I think the other big piece of substance that came out of it was the executive order that he's going to reissue next week on the travel ban that is going to be, as he said, sort of more in accordance with what the courts would approve of.
Frank, I want to bring you in on this. I want to play something else from the president yesterday that goes not to his style, but the substance of what he was trying to relay yesterday.
We had a very smooth rollout of the travel ban. But we had a bad court. We got a bad decision. We had a court that's been overturned, again, maybe wrong, but I think it's 80% of the time. A lot. We had a bad decision. We're going to keep going with that decision. We're going to put in a new executive order next week sometime. You had Delta with a massive problem with their computer system at the airports. You had some people that were put out there, brought by very nice buses, and they were put out at various locations. The rollout was perfect.
Now, Frank, you cautioned me months ago not to get caught up in judging the president's style. Leave that to points of opinion. Deal with what he says, what's true, what's not. In that one statement there were several things that were demonstrably false. If you look at the timing, the Delta computer problems did not motivate what went wrong at the airports. It came afterwards. You had the Homeland Security Secretary, Kelly, say that the rollout was a mistake. It was a consensus of opinion of those in the White House and those involved in it. So what did you see yesterday in terms of the president's ability to deal with the truth?
It's a challenge, so we say. I mean, and this is the problem. And there's a lot of focus on the president picking on the media and the war with the media. and that's happening, but that's off the point. The president talked about coming to Washington, draining the swamp. He should be filling the reservoir right now. This should be a honeymoon period, a reservoir of goodwill, alliances he's going to need. And instead, by citing falsehoods like this, several of them in the news conference, that becomes the conversation. Instead of a focused news conference that the president could have had, he had a new labor secretary. We haven't even spoken about that yet. That was actually a pretty quick replacement. Who is this person?
And a Latino.
Right. He's qualified, or so it seems. There should be focus on that. The president has had a series of very high-level meetings. We could be talking about that. As David pointed out, the president is going to roll out another immigration executive order and other things. News conferences, presidents use news conferences, especially early on, to tee up their team and to tee up their priorities so that is what people are talking about, not all these sideshows. He's hurting himself now and in the longer run by having this distracted narrative about all those falsehoods and vendettas that he's got against others whom he's blaming for his problems.
Julie, he did talk about immigration. You know, we've seen a couple of high-profile cases over the past week of women who have been here in the country for years, decades, have children here, and have been deported. So he talked again about the so-called dreamers who were brought here as children through no choice of their own, and what his policy will be towards the DACA program. Listen to this.
We're going to show great heart. DACA is a very, very difficult subject for me, I will tell you. To me, it's one of the most difficult subjects I have, because you have these incredible kids, in many cases, not in all cases. In some of the cases, they're having DACA and they're gang members and they're drug dealers too. But you have some absolutely incredible kids. I would say mostly. They were brought here in such a way. It's a very, very tough subject. We are going to deal with DACA with heart.
What did you hear there, Julie?
That, to me, was one of the most fascinating answers in this news conference, and it showed just how difficult this issue has been for Republicans to deal with, because it is true, when you hear these stories of these people who were brought to the United States as children, who were, you know, brought here by their parents or brought here by others that had no control over their circumstances, and now have gone to school here, in some cases have joined the military here, it's really hard to envision how you kick them out. At the same time, the president is splitting from some of his own advisors who take a very tough line on immigration, who say that even these children who were brought here under those circumstances should not be allowed to stay. He hasn't clarified how he is going to address this, other than saying in that press conference that he's going to deal with it with heart. But this is just one of the most difficult early issues that I think he's going to have to deal with. And it's on his plate. This is something he can do through executive action to either stick with what President Obama put in place in terms of the deportation policy, or to change that. That's on him right now.
But you know what? That's the job. It is difficult. It's not just as simple as a matter of law. It's about what you enforce and how, and that you don't. And he is right, the president. It is difficult. Families are going to be destroyed depending on how you deal with DACA. So at least he was correctly identifying the struggle. That wasn't the case all the way through this press conference. On anti-Semitism, David Chalian, he didn't want to address the reality. He tried to blame it on the reporter. He tried to blame it on the other side. He ignored the facts. On Russia also, he was trying to deny a reality. Let's play it.
The greatest thing I could do is shoot that ship that's 30 miles offshore right out of the water. Everyone in this country is going to say, oh, it's so great. That's not great. That's not great. I would love to be able to get along with Russia.
Objectively, David, that is not the best thing that the president could do. It would probably be one of the worst things that he could do. However, he brought it up and said something strong because he had said nothing. A president who roundly criticizes President Obama for being weak, said this is the era of strength. There has been a chain reaction of obvious provocations by his supposed new friend in Russia, and he had ignored it until then. What did you make of his response?
And he said not good to each of the provocations when they were listed to him. So we learned that he doesn't think those things are good. I actually thought that sound you just played, Chris, was one of the most stunning things he said throughout that entire hour and 17-minute press conference, because imagine you're in the Pentagon or you're serving this country in uniform, and you just heard the commander-in-chief say that he thinks the best thing he could do politically for himself is to actually launch an attack. That would be extraordinarily unsettling. if you're in uniform waiting for your instructions from the commander-in-chief? Does that mean he views military action solely through a political lens of what's good and what's not good for his political reputation? I thought it was really alarming when he said that. And as you said, I also think it misreads how the country responds to a president when they take on military action.
Right, and of course he should, of all people, know that since he railed against the Iraq war as he was campaigning. Panel, stick around, please. We have many more questions for you.
All right, President Trump pretty much launched his most fierce attack, I would say, on the media yet, ripping into reporters, calling our stories dishonest and out of control. Important to note, he had no facts or proof that reporting has been wrong. What is behind the president's war with the media? Is it working for him? Next.
And I do, and by the way...